Oh, look at
You
that.
should know about this, Cindy. It's masturbation for people of all genders and abilities by Vic
Mm.
Lou. And it's like a thin book. It is so amazing, even for people who've been, our old hats at masturbating. Um, it's really a wonderful book. I highly recommend it.
Nice. Bang.
Bang. Uh, I didn't prepare anything, so I thought maybe we would just sort of talk about it and see if people have questions.
Yeah, we can freewheel. And it's interesting because, it's such an important and a popular topic. And I only got one question, I think. So,
Oh, right.
yeah, we
I
love it
forgot to
when you
look at that.
guys, when you give us questions. So
Yeah.
feel free to jump in with your questions. The topic, of course, is masturbation
It
today.
is.
I can also say I just got an electric bidet, and that's a really remarkable masturbation tool. I was almost going to be late today because I was sitting on the toot, using my new toy, which is amazing.
I have never thought to use my bidet that way, but
Really?
yeah, I know.
Wow, that was the first thing I
Of course it was. Of course it was. No sex drive problems there. But that's a great idea, actually.
Yeah.
I just got a
Yeah.
water pick.
Maybe.
Maybe, although it's
Oh, I
very
wonder, that might be
focused. It might
very
be painful.
intense.
Yeah, it might be painful. I'll
Yeah,
let you
yeah.
know. I'll
Let
let
me
you know.
know.
I'll
Let
let
me
you know.
know.
So I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about how it was very difficult to orgasm when they were masturbating.
Mm-hmm.
And they had been trying. They didn't have any shame about masturbating. They felt free and turned on and everything, and they would feel very aroused, but it would go nowhere, and
Mm.
then they just get tired, either
Mm.
mentally or physically tired.
Yeah.
And this has been going on for a while. And
Mm.
so what I recommended, I asked this person if they had a lot going on, if they were thinking about other things, that intrusive thoughts keep coming in.
Mm. Mm.
And they said yes. And I said, well,
Yeah.
there you go.
Mm-hmm.
That could be your primary reason.
Yeah.
If you're getting aroused and it's stopping, then
Yeah.
you know. So I recommended the anxiety test. 5 things that you can see. Name 5 things that you
Mm-hmm.
can see. Name
Mm-hmm.
4 things that you can hear. 3
Mm-hmm.
things you can touch. 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And if
Mm-hmm.
you can't taste anything, think about something that you like to taste.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything that helps control the, I call it like a chorus of monkeys in your mind, which is completely normal. I think most of us have overactive minds these days because we're overstimulated. There's just too much going on
Yeah.
mentally all the time. So it's really it's really common. And I would go so far as to say it's normal
Mm-hmm.
for people to be, mentally not on the job. And I think this is, across genders and across all kinds of people these days struggle to concentrate on anything because the way that our lives are these days, especially because all of us are spending loads of time online,
Yeah.
is it's not useful to being present, which is what's required, I think, for
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thing. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
I agree.
Mm.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about switching things up. I think most of us, if we don't think about it, we've been masturbating the same way since we discovered how to masturbate.
Yeah.
And switching things up is a good way to find different positions that you might enjoy having sex with partner.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a good way to figure out if there's a different angle that really turns you on. If you're using your fingers, then if you're on your back, that's one angle. But if you've got your butt up in the air and you're, and your hands underneath you, that's a different angle. And that feels differently. Like when you're talking to somebody who has a penis, if they're going to masturbate with their dominant hand, try masturbating with your non-dominant hand and see how that feels, or masturbating in the opposite with the opposite side of the hand. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many kinds of things to do and so many kinds of ways to do it, you know, because I guess at the end of the spectrum that I work at, which is the sort of psychological and the emotional end of it, it's about, you know, allowing yourself to find what's the motivation for masturbating. Because if people are just not interested in it and they're like, well, why would I do that? Or, you know, to sort of feed into this story that, you know, real sex has to be with another person. This is such a pervasive idea that so many people carry, that it's not real sex if another person's not involved in it.
Right.
And the truth, I think, is for all of us, the only person who is going to be our very, very long-term partner is us, you know. And so that, to me, I think is the incentive for us to sort of engage in masturbation. And also, too, I mean, for people who are in relationships, I'm sure there are some people who are watching this who have agreements perhaps with their partners around the fact that, you know, that masturbation, perhaps they believe that masturbation shouldn't happen in a relationship, that why would I masturbate, you know, when I've got you?
Right.
And I mean, people can have their own opinions about all kinds of things, and that's fine. And what I would add on top of that is that masturbation sex, as a perfectly valid and reasonable form of sex, is something that I would encourage people to do whether they are in relationships or not, because it doesn't mean that the sex that you have with your partner is better or worse, and it certainly doesn't mean that having sex by yourself is inferior. It just means that it gives you a variety of sensations and joys and pleasures to engage in that have nothing to do with love and obligation and guilt, and everything to do with focusing on what feels good. So I really think, you know, my perspective on all of this is that masturbation is a crucial self-development tool. It's a really great way to get to know yourself. And then when you know how to please yourself, you can then share that with another person, or, you know, and then also that will change. And so again, you know, for people our age, as your bodies start to change, what arouses you is going to be different, and what your body responds to is going to be different. And so that's why I think it's important to masturbate at lots of different age groups. Because you'll find that your body responds to different stuff depending on your age, your diet, where you are on your cycle, if you have periods, your, you know, just your general health. All these kinds of things are going to affect how your body responds to touch. And particularly for kind of cyclical beings, you will notice at different stages through the month that your body responds to touch in really different ways. And that's a really fascinating thing to know. So,
and times of day too.
Right.
Yeah, times of day. Someone said a crucial self-discovery tool. I love that. It's very, very true. And I also think there's this it's not lube, it's like a massage butter, and it's great for massage. I use it because I live alone right now. I use it when I get out of the shower, but it's a massage. It made me think a massage is a great way to start maybe a mutual masturbation process with your project, with your spouse, because you know what I mean, or your partner, because you're getting into that touch area, and then it can just move down to, called We Love, and just move downwards and see how that goes. I mean, there's lots of couples that use mutual masturbation as a way to connect. People who have just had surgery, people who have just had a baby, people who have really busy lives, and they're just like, I want an orgasm and I want to connect, but I don't want to fuck. I just want touch, and, you know? which is great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's the ultimate sort of pressure-free sexual activity that we can do. And what I mean by, and by pressure-free, I mean we reduce the, the insistence that we have an orgasm. I think for so many people that push to orgasm, even though that was our topic the last time we did this 2 weeks ago. And, I'm not opposed to orgasms. I think they're great. But sometimes the idea of having an orgasm becomes so dominant, and pleasure leaves the room because we're just so kind of, I've got to have an orgasm. I've got to have an orgasm,
Yeah.
And masturbation is probably going to be one of the ways to guarantee that you're going to have an orgasm if that's what matters to you. But also, it's just a really great way to de-stress, to relax, to learn to enjoy your body. And that I think is always going to be a worthwhile investment.
Yeah. And, taking time too to discover your body. I consider that a type of masturbation, of really making a practice of getting naked and touching your body very slowly with different types of pressure or movement or speed. And because we change as we grow, you will find different areas of your body that you were like, oh, I didn't know that I like that there. And that's super exciting to find too. And also the idea that touching, like you said, doesn't have to end in orgasm, and that the idea of arousal and physical pleasure being the main event is a really delightful thought, to just be there for the pleasure in whatever way that shows up.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really what the crux of it is. So I would like to hear from the folks who are watching. What are your ideas about masturbation? What's your opinion about it? What do you think about it?
Do you have hacks? Masturbation hacks?
Yeah. And also, I mean, even the stigma of it, because it's such a, certainly on Instagram, as we are, they don't like us talking about these things. No. And I've never really understood what the stigma about it is. I mean, apart from it being sex, because everybody freaks out about sex in general. But it's so interesting that it's really, one of the kinds of sex that is still considered pretty kind of taboo and edgy for a lot of people, and that can really interrupt our ability to enjoy ourselves.
I agree. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, type them on in. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to chat. And as fascinating as we are. Indeed. Yeah. So I'm all progesteroned out, so my brain is not working as well as it normally does, and we all know how well that works.
Oh.
But yeah. So questions, people. Let me see here. No questions. One of my favorite ways to connect with a partner, or what I will often give as advice, is, and you're very familiar with this, I know, because you have a background in Tantra, is Yoni and Lingam massage. And that is a great way to connect with your partner. And what that is what do you want to describe it, or shall I?
You can describe it.
Okay. So a yoni means vulva, vagina, and lingam means penis in Sanskrit. And I think lingam is sheath. No. Yoni is sheath, and lingam is like phallus or whatever. Yeah. At any rate, that's neither here nor there. So just say you're going to be giving a yoni massage. The person with the vagina or vulva is laying on their back with their legs spread. You have you set the scene in a beautiful way, anything that feels sensual or organically erotic to you. And the first thing you tell your partner who's getting the massage is that it is all about them. That if they want to reciprocate, that's great, but it won't be that night. It'll be the next day. That the whole idea of this is to be able to receive pleasure, to concentrate on receiving that pleasure from another person, especially without that idea that you're going to have to, get out of that state afterwards, that blissful state, and then reciprocate. The idea for the person who is giving the massage too is to methodically massage the outside of the vulva, the labia majora, the inside, finding ways to touch that area, maybe also the inside of the thighs, really exploring that area in ways you think it will give your partner pleasure, and watching your partner for the signs of arousal and the signs of pleasure, and even asking questions like, do you like this here? Do you like it? So sort of practicing almost for sex with your partner when it's not so focused on massage. And oftentimes, even though it's not, the aim is not to end in orgasm, it can. And often people will find something new about themselves and their own arousal, and also build intimacy. So if there is, say, a couple who's having hard time connecting because of an empty nest, say, it's a whole new dynamic at home, and now they're home together and there's nothing distracting them. This can be a really nice way to reconnect and find that that set point to get intimate with each other. Anyway, it is one of my favorite things personally, and also one of my favorite things to recommend. So
my one of the videos that I have in the Atlas of Erotic Anatomy is called What to Do with What You Find, which is an introduction to erotic massage. And in fact, if folks subscribe to my newsletter, you also get a handout that's a broader overview of the basics of setting up how you might want to do an erotic massage, and learning how to touch by learning how to touch yourself and learning how to touch another person, again, is such an underrated skill, because I think a lot of us just tend to touch like we just pick up an object. We just sort of touch, and we always sort of go with the fingertips. And there are just so many ways to learn how to touch, to learn how to be in tune with people, which is also where calming the mind sort of matches up with that, because it's one thing to just be touching somebody, but if you're just sort of mindlessly touching them and just like, fidgeting and playing around, it doesn't have that level of intentional,
there's no gravitas,
sort of mindful touch behind it. It's kind of like just an insect climbing on your skin, and it can feel really irritating. So being able to really bring more of yourself to touch, whether you're touching yourself or touching another person or receiving touch, is just such an important lesson that is often really overlooked when people are either, racing to orgasm or focusing on, new toys and new lubes and new products and all this sort of stuff. And all that stuff is great, but none of it is going to really hit the spot if you're not bringing your whole self to it. And that's always the secret ingredient, I think, that takes sex from kind of, it was good, through to, oh my God, that was amazing, like memorable sex, that kind of sex. The distinction is the degree to which you bring yourself to the interaction. And that is where masturbation, I think, becomes so crucial, because when you can bring yourself to that in your own solo practice, it's going to be that little bit easier to bring that part of yourself through during partnered sex to make you receive more pleasure and also to be a better lover for them.
I agree. I think I think that is a really great way of describing to great sex, whether it's by yourself or with someone else. And you'd be surprised too, people that you don't think you would be attracted to in bed become incredibly desirable when they are touching you with intention and with connection, even if you know them for 10 minutes. You know?
And I think that's the thing. Like, if you've it's really hard to know what you like if you've never had it, and that's the same with sex. If you've never had sex that was really deliberate and intentional, you don't know what you're missing. If you've only ever had, you know, kind of the equivalent of fast food sex, which is fine sometimes. It's not to say, you know, there's anything wrong with it. But if that's all you've ever known, it's hard to imagine anything different. And this is where masturbation becomes really crucial, I think, because you get to sample so many different kinds of things by yourself if you're not just, you know, getting one out and getting it done before you fall asleep because it's a stress reliever, which is perfectly fine. That's a perfectly good reason to masturbate, but there's a real difference from just racing to orgasm, watching porn on your phone or your tablet or your whatever before you sleep, and having a really deliberate, intentional solo sex session to learn how long it takes your body to go from not even 0 to 100, but 0 to 20 to 40 to 60 to 80, and to monitor yourself as you're going along. This is especially true for people with penises because they often tend to race straight to the finish line, and it's kind of like this mad rush, and then it's over, you know.
They're missing out on what's in between.
There's so much, you know, and also for people who struggle with ejaculation, you know, either too fast or not enough and these kinds of things, the solo masturbation practice is a really helpful way to start taking control of your ejaculations, so you're not at the mercy of it being out of control or happening when you don't want it to, or happening sooner than you want it to. That your solo practice can be really a helpful way to reduce that sense of feeling like you don't have any control. And that's just so crucial because, again, a lot of people with penises are taught to do it quickly and to rush to orgasm, and it can be over in 30 seconds, which is fine unless you want it to last longer. And if you do want it to last longer, you have to train your body to make that happen.
And just because this brings up an important point, is there are lots of people with penises who later in life have a hard time getting to ejaculation and miss ejaculating.
Yeah.
Do you think that practicing masturbation and is a good way to sort of help them ejaculate in a different way, or help them not in a different like physical way, but just get there in a different way?
It might be. I mean, it depends on what the cause of the ejaculation reduction is. If it's a medical thing, then I'm not sure what effect it would have.
Right.
But if it's more just, you know, just a getting older thing, you can learn to experience, especially again for people with penises, you can learn to experience pleasure without ejaculating. Because again, we tend to associate in penises, we tend to associate ejaculations with orgasms. And often in penises, they're the same. In vulvas, they're often not the same, which we talked about last time. But with penises, they often are the same. And that can be the root of so much dissatisfaction.
Right.
For everybody. So learning how to separate your ejaculations from your orgasms, I actually think is a really useful skill. And if it does become something that happens to you as you get older, you know, I mean, people pay thousands of dollars to learn how to do that. So it's all, I mean, a lot of these things are really about how they bring you distress or how they bring you disappointment because of what they mean to you, you know, and people are like, I can't ejaculate, or I can't come, or I come too fast. You know, my first question is always, tell me what it is about that bothers you. Because often, you know, it's not really got anything to do with pleasure and everything to do with how my relationship to my gender identity, or am I man enough? Often, it's this notion of being a man, and for a lot of penis havers who identify as men, that idea of sex and masculinity is so intertwined and is such a cause of shame and disappointment and embarrassment. And a lot of the work that I do is around helping penis owning men to start to separate out the strings of that, because that's the work that needs to be done in order to have the kind of sex that they really want to have. It's not, how to pop a Viagra and fuck like a porn star. You can do that, fine, no problem. But that's not going to bring you the pleasure that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good advice. That is good advice, because it is something that I think all sex educators and sex therapists get a lot of is I'm having a hard time ejaculating, or I'm doing it too quickly, and so it's really good to hear you talk about separating what their idea is, what their expectations are of pleasure and of their genitals and all of that. So
right. I mean, so much of what we suffer with sex is our expectations. It's a combination of a lack of education and a misalignment with what our expectations are, and a culture that's obsessed with performance, that's just and all about the performance and nothing about the pleasure and the quality, and it just causes 95% of the strife that people have about sex is that, in some version of that, and of course it's like everybody just wants to feel like they're normal. The truth is that that's actually incredibly normal. And then, when people are reassured, oh, don't worry about that part, you're normal, they still feel dissatisfied. And so that remaining dissatisfaction has got to do with what it means to them. If I can't ejaculate, it means this, or if I can't have this experience, it means that. That's really powerful stuff, and that's really where the learning and the expansion comes from, is having a relationship with sex that's meaningful. That sort of separates us from monkeys in the forest. I think,
well, this is
bless the monkeys in the forest.
If you want to hear more interesting talks like this, Cindy has an amazing podcast called The Erotic Philosopher.
She does.
It is really like an intellectual deep dive into subjects with really incredible and interesting guests. So I would check wherever you listen to podcasts for The Erotic Philosopher.
Do it.
It's really a great podcast.
I'm taking a little break from it at the moment because I'm about to start writing a book.
That's right.
But there's thank you. But there's a bazillion episodes. Actually, that's not true. There's 25 episodes that folks can dig into. So it'll keep you nourished over the next couple of months while I'm getting this book knocked out, it's about desire and libido and getting it on when you don't feel like it, because after orgasms, getting it on when you don't feel like it is the number one reason people come to see me. And I've done so much research on it, and I've worked out a bunch of different strategies for people to learn how to get it on when they don't feel like getting it on. And I use them on myself, and they work. So there you go. So that's what my book's about. My book's about my book is about what works, not what doesn't work. So it's not all about what's wrong with you. It's about this is what works. So so
I always think of you
coming
as
out.
the desire guru.
Thank you.
You are the desire guru. That's how I think of you.
Oh, thanks. I'm feeling very desirable, desiring.
Neither am I, but you know what? It all comes in waves.
It does. It does. With our fabulous lipsticks. We will reconvene with all of you next Friday.
Next Friday. Yeah.
With a new topic. And we'll see where we end up.
Yeah. And then we'll have a topic for you. Keep checking our Instagrams. We'll give you a topic probably on Monday. All right.
Tasty. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.